Doppelganger. I could feel him inside my head, burning, consuming, devouring. He crept through my entire body, dictating all that I did. It was like being constantly buried in sand up to your neck, unable to move your limbs without further entrenching yourself. For 10 years, I felt as if I was always suffocating. I watched him for what seemed like an eternity, living my life in my house with my wife. And each day I thought to myself that I had to get rid of this imposter, this doppelganger that seized me from within and kept me from myself. I had to be rid of the being that had snatched my very existence from my grasp. I tried to reason with him more than once. I begged, I cried, I pleaded. I implored him to release me, but to no avail. He had no intention of relinquishing control of my body. I'm not even sure he realized that the battered man in his dreams was the person he had usurped. Soon, I resorted to a more violent attitude. I would shout at him in his sleep, attack him, try to frighten him into giving up. If he was scared enough, I thought he might abandon his efforts. I had no luck for a very long time. After a long while, though, he started to get neurotic and paranoid. At this point, he was desperate to keep his stolen body. He would talk to my wife of nightmares, of the feeling that something was haunting him or trying to possess him. He spoke as if I was the problem. It didn't take me long to figure out that he was misdirecting her, that he was using my voice to speak lies. I persisted in my tactics, trying to scare him. It worked by inches. Every time I saw him in the mirror, he looked more exhausted and less well kept. The constant nightmares were taking a physical toll. I was weakening his grip. He became so desperate, in fact, that he began Googling things like demonic possession and poltergeists, looking for help. It was almost sad. There's not a whole lot out there on how to rid yourself of the original tenant of a body. Of course, he didn't find anything. But I did. I saw the things he read, and I began to get ideas. Slowly, as I pushed against him, I felt him begin to slip. He started to grow disorganized, paranoid. He quit my job and locked himself in my computer room, perching before a computer monitor as he searched desperately for help. He ruined my life before I could get it back, spending months in that office with the blinds drawn. I think he was trying to discourage me, trying to convince me that the effort was futile. I had no more job, no more wife, no more money. But I didn't give up. I spent too long trying. I was gaining ground by miles now. I acquired control of my physical faculties once more. I could wiggle my fingers or toes for moments at a time. After practice, I could speak again. And eventually I learned to walk. He couldn't keep me strangled. This morning, I woke up to realize that he was gone. I had control again. I leapt to my feet and ran around the house in disbelief, tearing open the blinds and tossing things in the air, reveling in the sense of pure ecstasy. I ran a hot shower, enjoying the feeling of the water on my back. When I emerged, I took a long moment to breathe the soap-scented air, amazed that I was finally free. Still grinning, I wiped down the foggy mirror with a towel so I could shave, but stopped dead the moment the glass was clear. Please, my mouth was saying over and over. I just want my body back. Symmetry. I love Symmetry. I'm not exactly sure why, but I've loved it since I was a kid. Most children are messy and forgetful of their things. Not me. I knew everything had a place, and in my room, everything was right where it belonged. My parents didn't have it. My grandparents didn't have it either. Not a single person in my family had it. I started referring to it as it because I truly believe that it's a thing inside me. A stowaway that shouldn't be there and lives inside me. It's a need, a desire, a longing to be perfect. Perfect on both sides. As an adult, I'm at the point where I can't live my life normally. I can't keep a job. Women don't stay with me because they can't handle it. Honestly, I don't even care when they leave. They're messy and they make things difficult. They roll over on my side of the bed instead of staying on their own. They leave dishes on one side of the sink but not the other. I can't work anymore, so when they leave for the day, I have to stay home and fix everything. It's a relief when they leave for good. That feeling never lasts, though. Eventually, it comes back and finds something else that needs fixing. You may be asking why I would seek out relationships to begin with if I can't stand them. Well, it's hard for me to sleep in the middle of the bed all night without moving. Other than the relationship problem, my life is pretty much in order. I say pretty much because there's one last issue that must be dealt with. You see, I have what's called heterochromia iridium, or 2 different colored irises. My right eye is cornflower blue, my left pale green. Both my parents have cornflower blue eyes, my siblings and cousins as well. My green eye is the broken one. It makes me feel unbalanced. Every time I look in the mirror, it stares right back at me. It's all I think about now. Everything is in its proper place, except my green little mistake. It didn't hurt at first when I dug the spoon under my eye. It didn't even hurt when it popped out and was hanging by my cheek. Was it shock that was keeping the pain away, or was it? I snipped the octave nerve and blotted the warm fluids that were streaming down my face. My vision being cut in half was a strange sensation. What was left of the dangling flesh, I placed back in my now empty hole. I bandaged the wound, rinsed the spoon, and went to sleep. I woke up happy. I slept better than I had in years. It was finally done. I was fixed. I got out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom. My body ached. My head was on fire. I flipped the switch in the bathroom, and the light was blinding. I slowly removed the bandage that was soaked with blood and was sticking to my face like tape. When I looked up in the mirror, my stomach turned. Only then had I realized what I had done, and I couldn't believe it. There was a hole in the left side of my face, but not the right. I was unbalanced again. It was much harder digging out the second eye. My hands were shaky, and when I dug the spoon in, I missed several times, puncturing my pupil 3 times before I got it in. Once the eye popped out, I reached for my scissors to finish the job. The blood from the previous night had dried on the blades, so the scissors didn't cut very well. You know when you were a kid in elementary school and your teacher made you cut construction paper for art projects? Did you ever try to cut too many pieces at once, but the scissors couldn't take it? The blades would just kind of fold over on each other and the paper would get pinned in between them. That's what happened with my eye. The optic nerve was pinned between two blades. It was stuck, and as I tried desperately and frantically to make it unstuck, I slipped on the blood and started falling to the floor. Reflexes kicked in, and I let go of my eye to break my fall with my hand. The weight of the stuck scissors on my hanging eye was unbearable. I knew I couldn't stand it long enough to make it to the kitchen to get a knife. So I pulled it straight out of my head. I felt the flesh tear from the inside of my skull. I felt it rip and spew liquids everywhere. I knew I was crying, but there was no telling the tears from the blood from the ocular fluid. When I heard the wet slap of the bloody flesh against the tile floor, I knew I was done. I knew it was done. I could live my life now without having to see people's awful, messy, uneven lives. The relief washed over me, and I knew it would last this time. I had never felt this way before, never had this much hope. As I laid in my bathroom on that cold, wet, sticky tile, I smiled for the first time in years. It's locked. About 10 years ago, I was recently divorced and living alone in a one-room apartment. The place was clean and the rent was decent. One of those places that had a doorman. I felt safe here. I was alone and loving it, focused on my career, not my clingy ex-husband. Things were finally looking up for me. At the time, I was working pretty late at the office, and would often stumble in my apartment sleep-deprived in the early hours of the morning, and wake up by 6:30, 7-ish to start the day. I started noticing that in the morning, my door would be unlocked sometimes. I usually dismissed this as my sleep-deprived brain thinking that the bed looked more appealing than locking the door. Another thing that I noticed since moving was that I seemed to be misplacing things more than I used to. Little things, like a hairbrush or nail polish, that sort of thing. It wasn't really that big of a deal, just enough to be a slight annoyance in my day. The longer I lived there, the more frequently I seemed to forget to lock my door. At first it was every once in a while, then it seemed like an almost daily occurrence. More things went missing, things like pictures, shaving razors, and, more disturbingly, my underwear. This went on for long enough that I started to get a little paranoid. I started to take the time at night to make sure the door was locked. I got into the habit of every night after I locked my door to turn the handle 3 times and say to myself, "It's locked. It's locked. It's locked." Time after time I would wake up and the door would be unlocked. One time I even tried staying up all night to watch the door, but I ended up falling asleep in my chair. I decided that my mind was not reliable enough to stay up all night, so I invested in a video camera. I went all out and bought the fanciest camera that I could get my hands on. So one night I set the camera up facing the door. I hid the camera under a pile of towels on the floor. I locked the door and went to bed. When I woke up, my apartment looked normal. Nothing missing that I could see. I decided to check the tape. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage, not seeing anything. I was just about to give up when I noticed the handle on the door jitter. Then it slowly crept open. A figure slid through the half-open door and walked towards the camera. It paused, looked around as if it was listening for something, then walked forward into direct view of the camera. I paused the camera The hairs on my arms and the back of my neck started to rise. I was staring directly into the face of the maintenance man of the building. I could see those big, thick glasses and curly hair. I had no doubt who it was. I played the tape a little more. He looked comfortable as he walked around my apartment. Then he turned and walked towards my bedroom and out of view of the camera. I didn't know what to do. Sobbing, I called the police. I tried to explain over the phone but couldn't. Soon enough, 2 officers arrived at my doorstep. I told them everything and showed them the tape. I remember seeing the blood drain from their faces. They promised me that I was safe and that they were going to get this guy. I needed to lay down, but I didn't want to be alone. One of the officers offered to stand outside my apartment door as I took a nap. As I was laying in the bed, unable to sleep but too drained to move, something kept nagging at me. I laid there for a few minutes, tossing and turning, unable to get comfortable. My mind was racing. Then a realization slowly washed over me and chilled me to the bone. We watched the tape, and we saw the man enter my home. But we never saw him leave. I froze, then started shaking. I needed to get to the front door. I sat up and looked around the room. I couldn't see anyone. I swung my legs over the side of the bed cautiously. My feet hit the cold wood floor, and I felt warm breath on my ankles. I raced out of the apartment as fast as I could, and to the safety of the police officer. He called for backup. They found him under my bed, clutching a knife and a Polaroid camera. To this day, I cannot sleep alone. Obsessive compulsive. Hello. I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder in which people have unwanted and repeated thoughts, feelings, ideas, or behaviors. In other words, my life is a systematic pattern. But yesterday, I experienced a flaw in my own system. I awoke that morning in my lakeside home at promptly 6:45 a.m., as I do every morning. Before leaving my bedroom, I touched the doorknob 3 times. I had to. I need to. On my way downstairs, I made sure not to step on the second to last step. I never touch that step. I just can't. I made my usual breakfasts of toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee. I never eat anything else in the morning. Just always those 3. Turning on my iPad, I checked the local news headlines, like usual. But today, something was missing. I couldn't place my finger on it. Did I forget something? The strange feeling lingered with me all the way to my car. On my way out the front door, I made sure to lock my door, then unlock it, and lock it again. Driving to work, I couldn't help but feel like a part of me was missing. What did I miss? How could I have possibly missed it? I hoped that feeling would go away while working. It didn't. It stayed with me for 12 hours. I left the office around 6:45 p.m. and headed back home. About 25 minutes into my commute, I stopped for the red traffic light at the intersection of Marbury and Westway. But as the light turned from red to green, I couldn't help but feel the strange sensation again. The only other person near me was the man driving behind me. He blared his horn for me to get going. But instead of accelerating, I just unrolled my window and motioned him to go around me. He did. I dreadfully sat in my car, still stopped at the intersection. Something is seriously wrong. What am I missing? I touched everything in my car, hoping that it would spark my memory. I touched the dashboard, the leather seats, the emergency brake, and even the roof. It did nothing for me. My hands began to tremble as I slowly drove away. This isn't right. I don't like this. Arriving home, I pulled my 1974 Mustang into the garage. I washed the car every weekday, but not on the weekends. I only wash the front and the back of the car, never the sides. No matter how dirty they get, I never wash the sides. I simply just can't. But something else seemed missing from my daily routine as I washed. No, not again. First the news, then the intersection, now this. Finishing up with the car, I jogged out to the backyard. Opening up the tool shed, I felt yet another thing missing from my pattern. I screamed, "This isn't right! This isn't right! This isn't right!" I stumbled out of the shed and gazed out at the lake. It always seemed to calm me when my anxiety got out of control. But tonight, all I wanted to do was sleep. I needed to finish this day. The next morning, I woke up at 6:45 a.m., touched the doorknob 3 times. I made sure not to step on the second to last step on my way down to the kitchen. I prepared my toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee. I turned on the iPad, browsed the local news. Still missing. I became aggravated. What is it I could be missing? I began to feel nauseous. Hurrying out the door in a vicious rage, I quickly locked the door, unlocked it, and locked it again, and then drove off to work. I tend to get a lot of work done when I am upset, strangely. So at least I felt some accomplishment when I left the office at 6:45 p.m. I drove fast on my way home. What am I missing? I approached the red light at Marbury and Westway. Come on, think. A man was walking in the middle of the intersection, on his way to the other side. Why can't I remember? The man's head spun as he noticed my Mustang coming straight for him at 85 miles per hour. I noticed him too. A wave of horror crossed over my face as I watched him dive to one side. I swerved in the same direction. A loud clunk was heard as I crushed the man underneath my vehicle. Oh God. Jumping out of my car, I hesitated on what to do. He lay there writhing in agony, making horrendous wails. I popped open the trunk to my Mustang, lifted the screaming man, and headed him in. Entering my garage, I made sure to wash the blood off the front and the rear of the car. The sides were not necessary. After dragging his broken body out to the backyard, I jogged to the shed. Inside were black garbage bags, cinder blocks, and a hacksaw. After dismembering the man, I was able to fit both the remains and a cinder block into the bag. Dropping him into the lake was all that was left to do. The following morning, I made sure to wake up at 6:45 a.m. and touch my doorknob 3 times before skipping the second to last step on the way to the kitchen. While eating my toast, scrambled eggs, and black coffee, I browsed the local news on my iPad. The top headline: Hit-and-run serial killer strikes again. I smiled. Back to normal. I saw it coming. This isn't a confession. You can't prove a damn thing, so don't even try. I'll deny it to my grave. I'm on my third drink for the evening anyways. You can't trust the word of a drunken man. That's when I start to feel anything these days. The third drink. Sometimes it takes 4, but usually 3 will do. It's the same cycle every night for weeks now. I drink, and then I start to feel. Then the fear comes over me. Then I drink some more until I pass out. Wake up, slog through the day, keep my head down, keep my chin up, don't draw anyone's attention. Go home, repeat. One night a few weeks back, there was a man at my door. I answered it, wondering what the devil he was doing there at that time of night. I live at the end of my street, and there's no one around for quite a ways. Even the evangelicals that comb through my neighborhood rarely make it all the way out to my house. "Help me," he gasped, his blood-flecked lips quivering in the rain. His forearm was badly broken, bits of bone sticking out through the skin. He was pale, the rain and blood dripping steadily from his haggard frame, pooling on my porch beneath him. "There's been an accident. I need help." He winced. Can you help me?" I nodded, dumbly, shocked at his state, then ran inside looking for my cell phone. But by the time I got back to the door with it, he was gone. The only sign of him was a trail of splattered red leading down my front porch steps and out into the front yard. I stood there, shocked for a moment. Then I put my phone away, slammed the door, and locked it. I don't know why, I was just scared, frightened by the whole affair. And some part of me, some damned, selfish part of me, kept saying it's okay. It's someone else's problem. He's gone, forget about it. So I poured myself a drink to ease my nerves. And then another. A few drinks later, I had forgotten all about him. And a few drinks after that, I had drunk myself to sleep. I woke up with my head throbbing. I'm not a heavy drinker. Well, used to not be one anyways. I stepped outside and noticed there was no blood on my porch, breathing a sigh of relief. Maybe the rain washed it all away, I thought. Or maybe it hadn't happened at all. I went to work nursing my hangover, but I made it through the day. Came home, tried to relax. I slept poorly the night before, and my day took what energy I had left, so I decided early in the evening to call it a night. I was just about to go to bed when there was another knock at the door. I froze, looking over to it. My heart raced. I tried to laugh off my rising fear. It was just someone at the door, nothing to be afraid of. But as my hand reached for the knob, I heard his voice. The same quaking shudder of a voice from the night before. "Help! I need help." I stood stone still as he pounded on the door. "God, it hurts. Please, why won't you help me?" I put my back to the door, bracing it, squeezing my eyes shut. This isn't real, I thought. It can't be. And after a few seconds, the knocking stopped, and it was quiet. I flung open the door, but there was no one there, no trace of blood or sign of his presence. Unsettled, I shut the door, locked it, and reached for a bottle. And so it went, for 4 more days. Each night the same, the locking, the horrible man at my door, the cries for help. And each night, I secured the door and waited until it stopped. Then drank myself into oblivion. By the 7th night, I'd had enough. I made a stiff drink as soon as I got home, and then another after that one. I had thought nothing but of the events of the previous week that day. So naturally, I was anticipating the knocking when it came that night, confirming my paranoid fears. I was waiting for it. I threw open the door upon the first knock, and there he was, battered arm hanging limp at his side, pale face twisted into a grimace. But before he could say anything, I leveled my shotgun at his face and pulled the trigger. His head popped like a blister, and I fired a second time, blowing his arm clean off and leaving a hole in his torso. Covered in his wet viscera, I shut the door. I want to say that I was in a trance, that I was on autopilot, or out of my head. But that's not true. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was trying to make a point to myself. See, I'm a level-headed man. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural or anything like that. We live in a rational world, and I damn well wasn't going to sit back and let my head play tricks on me without fighting back. They say blood is hard to wash off, but it's not true. His blood washed right off of me. One shower later, I was good as new. So when I finished cleaning up and calming down, I went back to the front door. I likewise expected there to be nothing there, as there had been no trace of him left from the previous nights. I couldn't believe it when I opened the door, and his remains slumped inside like a sack full of meat. I reached down and poked the corpse. It was solid. The porch was covered in blood and gore. Once more I panicked, and this time I did go into some sort of trance. The hours passed in a blur as I dragged the body around to the back of the house, dug out a shallow grave, cleaned off the porch as best I could, and took another shower. And then I made another drink. Tomorrow, the knocking would come again. I was sure. I hadn't just killed a man and buried him in my backyard. When I got home the next evening, I sat and waited anxiously. Any moment the knocking would come, the man would again be at my door, waiting for me, asking for help. Maybe tonight I'd laugh, invite him in, ask him if he wanted to drink. I thought, sipping my own drink nervously. The minutes stretched out, and it felt like I had waited an eternity when it finally came. The knocking. I breathed a sigh of relief as I rushed to the door. But it wasn't the man from the previous nights. It was the police. A car had gone off the road the night before. They wanted to know if I'd seen anything. Maybe it was my drunken state that allowed me to lie so convincingly. But after telling them I knew nothing of it, they bid me a good evening and left. My pulse pounded in my head. This couldn't be happening, I thought. It wasn't real. The thoughts piled on one by one, and all I could do to quell them was keep drinking until I lost consciousness. I called in sick the next day. I checked my backyard, and sure enough, the grave I had dug up was still there, still fresh. I dug him up, burned the body until it was ash. When I was done, I went back inside the house and numbly sat down. And since then, I can't feel anything. Not until I drink. Usually 3, sometimes 4. And it's only then I start to feel it. The fear. See, I'm not afraid of ghosts. I don't believe in them. I've never believed in them. Probably in part because I was raised by my heavily superstitious mother. She made her living as a psychic, telling fortunes. She claimed that she had the sight, that she could see a person's fate before it happened, and she had a steady stream of gullible clients that would keep a roof over our head and food on our table. So I didn't make a big deal out of it. But like any kid, I rebelled against her and her beliefs. And when I left home, I found plenty of support for that rebellion. Psychics aren't real, right? No one can see the future, right? 'Cause now, I'm afraid my mother wasn't faking it. That she really could see the fate of all those people who came to her. And now I'm afraid. I'm so terribly, damn afraid. that now I can see it too. The Guardian Angel. I am always with you. I was there from the time you were born. I stood in the delivery room, staring down at you before you could even open your eyes to see me. Your parents, relatives, and doctors couldn't see me there, in the corner, watching you with cloudy eyes. But I was there from the time you were born, and I followed you home. I was with you always, your constant companion. You played with your toys alone, while I stared from all angles in nearby mirrors. My matted, clotted hair, with oily sweat that hung from my dented forehead like glue. I was always your constant companion, drifting behind your mother's car on your ride to preschool. You're alone in the bathroom, but I was on the other side of the door, wind whistling through the bruised hole in my throat. My arms twisted and hanging in their sockets as I stood hunched on the other side of the shower curtain. I wait and follow you. I follow and drift behind you. I am not seen. I'm almost not there in light. You never saw me that morning, as I sat across from you at the breakfast table, a shiny red clot hanging from an empty tooth socket as I gaped grotesquely at you. I wonder sometimes if you know I'm there. I think you're aware, but you'll never understand just how close I am. I spend hours of your day doing nothing more than breathing in your ear. Breathing, gagging really. I crave to be close to you, to always wrap my crippled arms around your neck. I lie near you every night, cloudy eyes staring at your ceiling, underneath your bed, at your sleeping face in the dark. Yes, you caught me staring occasionally. Your parents came running down to your room one night when you screamed. You were just beginning to talk. You were only able to cry out, "Man! Man in my room." You thought you'd never forget the sight of me, with my collapsed jaw hanging to my chest, swinging back and forth. I sank back into your closet, and your mother was unable to see me, though you pointed and pointed and pointed. You thought you'd never forget when they left the same night. You saw the closet door crack, so softly, and me crawling across your floor to your bed on all fours, shambling and jerking movements as I pushed myself under your bed on disjointed limbs. You learned a new word for me, boogeyman. Not quite the monster you thought I was. I'm just waiting and following you always, touching your face with my knotted fingers as you sleep. You'll see me again soon. Any day now, I'm coming. Blunt and brutal. One day you'll walk across the road and I believe I'll plow into you with loud roar and a screech. You rolling on the pavement, rolling under wheels, blunt force metal fenders and my fingers touching your face again and again. As you stare up from the cold pavement with cloudy eyes, your matted, clotted hair hanging in your face, and your jaw unhinged and swinging to your chest. You'll see me approaching. No one else will see me. You will stare past them into my eyes, and I'll leer down at you. For the first time in our life, something like a smile will come over my face. You'll swear you're looking into a mirror. I'll lean down, past the doctors and the ogling people, and pick you up with my crooked arms. Our faces will touch. My wings will unfurl. And then you'll have to follow me. And I am always with you. I am your guardian angel. Messages. It's early in the morning. The sun won't be up for another couple of hours. You're fast asleep in bed, lost in a dream, when the phone rings. Rather than waking up, you roll over and cover your head with a pillow. Hours pass. The sun rises. The phone is ringing. When you wake up, your alarm is blaring and the phone is ringing. By the time you will yourself to turn off the alarm, your phone has stopped ringing. You realize that it's been ringing all morning. You slide out of bed and press the blinking red button on your phone as you slide into the bathroom. The phone beeps, followed by the friendly electronic voice. Hello. You have 666 new messages. Message 1. The phone beeps again, and you're not prepared for what happens next. Screaming. You spin around, thinking that she's right behind you. There's pure terror in her screams, accompanied by other disturbing noises. You stand there, horrified, for about 10 seconds. The screaming gives way to hysterical, garbled crying, before dying out with sounds of spilling meat and tearing flesh. The phone beeps again. You're shaking. Message 2. Autopilot. Have you ever forgotten your phone? When did you realize you'd forgotten it? I'm guessing you didn't just smack your forehead and exclaim, "Damn," apropos of nothing. The realization probably didn't dawn on you spontaneously. More likely, you reached for your phone, pawing open your pocket or handbag, and were momentarily confused by it not being there. Then you did a mental recap of the morning's events. Shit. In my case, my phone's alarm woke me up as normal, but I realized the battery was lower than I expected. It was a new phone, and it had this annoying habit of leaving applications running that would drain the battery overnight. So I put it on the charge while I showered instead of into my bag like normal. It was a momentary slip from the routine, but that was all it took. Once in the shower, my brain got back into the routine as it follows every morning, and that was it. Forgotten. This wasn't just me being clumsy, as I later researched. This is a recognized brain function. Your brain doesn't work on just one level, it works on many. Like, when you're walking somewhere, you think about your destination and avoiding hazards, but you don't need to think about keeping your legs moving properly. If you did, the entire world would just turn into one massive, hilarious Quap cosplay. I wasn't thinking about regulating my breathing, I was thinking about whether I should grab a coffee on the drive to work. I did. I wasn't thinking about moving my breakfast through my intestines, I was wondering whether I'd finish on time to pick up my daughter Emily from the nursery after work, or get stuck with another late fee. This is the thing. There's a level of your brain that just deals with routine, so that the rest of the brain can think about other things. Think about it. Think about your last commute. What do you actually remember? Probably little, if anything. Most common journeys blur into one, and recalling any one in particular is scientifically proven to be difficult. Do something often enough and it becomes routine. Keep doing it and it stops being processed by the thinking bit of the brain and gets regulated to a part of the brain dedicated to dealing with the routine. Your brain keeps doing it without you even thinking about it. Soon, you think about your route to work as much as you do keeping your legs moving when you walk. Most people call it autopilot, but there's danger there. If you have a break in your routine, your ability to remember and account for the break is only as good as your ability to stop your brain from going into routine mode. My ability to remember my phone being on the counter is only as reliable as my ability to stop my brain entering morning routine mode, which would dictate that my phone was actually in my bag. But I didn't stop my brain from entering routine mode. I got in the shower as normal. Routine started, exception forgotten. Autopilot engaged. My brain was back in the routine. I showered, I shaved, the radio forecast amazing weather. I gave Emily her breakfast and loaded her into the car. She was so adorable that morning. She complained about the bad sun in the morning blinding her, saying it stopped her from having a little sleep on the way to the nursery. And then I left. That was the routine. It didn't matter that my phone was on the counter, charging silently. My brain was in the routine, and in the routine, my phone was in my bag. This is why I forgot my phone. Not clumsiness, not negligence. Nothing more than my brain entering routine mode and overriding the exception. Autopilot engaged. I left for work. It was a swelteringly hot day already. The bad sun had been burning since before my notoriously absent phone woke me. The steering wheel was burning hot to the touch as I sat down. I think I heard Emily shift over behind my driver's seat to get out of the glare. But I got to work, submitted the report, attended the morning meeting. It's not until I took a quick coffee break and reached for my phone that the illusion shattered. I did a mental restep. I remember the dying battery. I remember putting it on to charge. I remember leaving it there. My phone was on the counter. Autopilot disengaged. Again, therein lies the danger. Until you have that moment, the moment you reach for your phone and shatter the illusion, that part of the brain is still in routine mode. It has no reason to question the facts of the routine. That's why it's a routine. The act of repetition. It's not as if anyone could say, "Why didn't you remember your phone? Didn't it occur to you? How could you forget? You must be negligent." This is to miss the point. My brain was telling me that the routine was completed as normal, despite the fact that it wasn't. It wasn't that I forgot my phone. According to my brain, according to the routine, my phone was in my bag. Why would I think to question it? Why would I check? Why would I suddenly remember out of nowhere that my phone was on the counter? My brain was wired into the routine, and in the routine, my phone was in my bag. The day continued to bake. The morning haze gave way to the relentless fever heat of the afternoon. Tarmac bubbled. The direct beams of heat threatened to crack the pavement. People swapped coffees for iced smoothies. Jackets discarded, sleeves rolled up, ties loosened, brows mopped. The park slowly filled with sunbathers and barbecues. Window frames threatened to warp. The thermometer continued to swell. Thank fuck the offices were air-conditioned. But, as ever, the furnace of the day gave way to a cooler evening. Another day, another dollar. Still cursing myself for forgetting my phone, I drove home. The day's heat baked the inside of the car, releasing a horrible smell from somewhere. When I arrived on the driveway, the stones crunching comfortably under my tires, my wife greeted me at the door. "Where's Emily?" Fuck. As if the phone wasn't bad enough. After everything, I had left Emily at the fucking nursery after all. I immediately sped back to the nursery. I got to the door and started practicing my excuses, wondering vainly if I could charm my way out of another late fee. I saw a piece of paper stuck to the door. "Due to vandalism overnight, please use side door. Today only." Overnight? What? The door was fine this... I froze. My knees shook. Vandals. A change in the routine. My phone was on the counter. I hadn't been here this morning. My phone was on the counter. I had driven past because I was drinking my coffee. I had not dropped Emily off. My phone was on the counter. She moved her seat. I had seen her in the mirror. My phone was on the counter. She'd fallen asleep out of the bad sun. She didn't speak when I drove past her nursery. My phone was on the counter. She changed the routine. My phone was on the counter. She changed the routine, and I'd forgotten to drop her off. My phone was on the counter. 9 hours, that car, that baking sun, no air, no water, no power, no help. That heat. Steering wheel too hot to touch. Oh, that smell. I walked to the car door. Numb. Shock. I opened the door. My phone was on the counter. And my daughter was dead. Autopilot disengaged. weeks. It's 3 a.m., and you've been up all night on a horror binge. You've watched your favorite horror movies, read your favorite scary stories, and even attempted the old Bloody Mary trick in your mirror. You stretch and yawn, deciding now is about time to hit the hay. So you move into your bedroom and lay down to sleep. After a while, however, you realize that you can't get the images of some of the fictional creatures you saw on your TV out of your head. I'm gonna hate myself for this tomorrow, you say aloud as you flick on your bedroom lamp, knowing that having a nightlight used to help get rid of your nightmares as a kid. Within minutes, you're close to sleep, snuggled up completely under the blankets, with your eyes closed, and more pleasant thoughts in your head. That is, until you detect something moving in front of the light, casting a shadow over you. You blink, beginning to turn towards the lamp, before a rotting hand grabs hold of your shoulder.
Thanks for turning on the light. I wouldn't have been able to find you in all that darkness.
Obsession. December 11th, 2011. Do you ever get that feeling that you're being watched? Well, I do. All the time. I guess I've sort of always liked the edge of paranoia it gives me. That feeling has been getting worse and worse lately, though. And upon further investigation, I realized that the same white van circled around my neighborhood multiple times a day. I don't know anyone in my neighborhood that owns a car like that, so it's a bit troubling. I'm worried for my son, especially being a young single mother. If anything happened to my baby, I'd ruthlessly hunt down and kill the person that did it. Galen's only 4 years old. He has a life to live. December 15th, 2011. Okay. Maybe I don't like that feeling anymore. The van seems to be circling around the block at least a dozen times a day now, and it sort of slows down as it goes by my house. It's really disconcerting. Should I call someone? Am I being really paranoid, or is this something to be worried about? I just don't know anymore. I don't want anyone to think I'm just some paranoid freak. December 21st, 2011. He parks his van outside the house every day now, for at least 15 minutes. I know it's a he, because he got out of the van today and looked through our mail as I watched through the window. He knows my name now, Angela Evans. What can you do with a name, anyways? It's just a name, and after all, what's in a name? December 25th, 2011. Doesn't this guy have a damn family? He's been outside of our house most of Christmas Day. Seriously, we're not that interesting of people. The guy needs to leave, and I'm gonna call the cops if he's there when I wake up tomorrow. I'm not dealing with this. December 26th, 2011. I called the police today. They said they dispatched someone over right away, but it's been 4 hours now, and the only cars I've seen are my own and that damn van. I'm getting pushed over the edge here. Is it a stalker or someone like that? Is he obsessed with me? January 1st, 2012. Today, he pulled up a lawn chair and started watching us from the curb. He was wearing shades, but I could still see that potbelly of his and that handlebar mustache crouched upon his face. I sulked away from the door, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing my face. January 15th, 2012. I was restless last night, and I got out of bed in my nightgown and walked around our small house, my bony arms crossed. I ran my sweaty hand through my hair, pacing through the kitchen and out into the sunroom. I looked outside the dark window, squinting to see the woods outside. The man stood there, still as a plank, wide grin plastered across his face. His thick eyebrows and horn-rimmed glasses stared back at me with malicious intent. I screamed, body frozen in fear. Minutes passed as we stared at each other. Finally, I broke the spell and ran away, curling up next to my son in his room. January 31st, 2012. We went grocery shopping today, my son and I. The white van was not parked outside, so we decided to go. Less than 2 minutes into the drive, I slammed on the brakes, realizing that I somehow had forgotten to lock the door. I raced back to the house, grabbed my son, and locked the door behind us. I checked everywhere, searching my house from top to bottom as I made sure the stalker wasn't inside. He wasn't. My heart continued beating quickly, but we left again, making sure to lock the door behind me. February 1st, 2012. I didn't check the crawl space. I didn't check the crawl space when I searched the house. I jumped out of bed at 2 a.m. this morning and ran down the flight of stairs that leads to the basement and opened the insulated compartment that led to the musty crawl space. I hesitated for a moment before slithering in. I was greeted warmly by the crunching of rat skulls beneath my feet. I flashed a small flashlight I brought with me and looked around. I sighed with relief as I realized no one was there. I crawled out, going straight back to my room and falling asleep. February 12th, 2012. I was taking a shower today when I heard the door open slightly to the bathroom. I turned off the shower quickly, grabbing a towel and searching the house. No one could be seen. I chastised myself for being so paranoid, walking back to the bathroom. I turned the shower back on and took my towel off. As I was just about to step back in the shower, I noticed a handprint high on the mirror. It was too high for my son to reach, and it was much too big to be my hand. I let out a small whimper from my lungs and trudged back into the shower, soap dripping from my hair. I tried to put the thought out of my mind, blaming it on the paranoia. It could have been my own handprint, just smudged to look better, right? But I know that isn't the truth. February 20th, 2012. I stared into the reflecting black glass door, eyeing at my figure. I have insecurity problems, all right? I put my hand on my stomach and pulled up my shirt, staring at my slender belly. I looked down, giggling as I stuck my finger into my shallow belly button. I looked back up into the reflecting glass, and my smile disappeared. He was standing behind me. He was standing behind me. He was standing behind me. And he was smiling. I froze in terror, turning slightly towards the stalker. But when my head reached the spot where his body was, he vanished. February 21st, 2012. The doorbell rang today. I I checked up on my son, and upon seeing the familiar bundles under the blankets, I went to go see who it was. It was a little girl selling Girl Scout cookies. I smiled at her as I opened my front door. She gave me her pitch, telling me all about the sorts of cookies she sold. I kindly refused her offers, though, as I was worried about my weight. She looked at me and asked, "Well, would your husband want some?" "I don't have a husband," I responded to her kindly. Her brow furrowed. She lifted a finger up, pointing to a certain white van down the street. "Then, who is that getting into the van with your son?"